welcome. Take It Up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with Rachel Haley, who's the Senior Director of Sales Operations at Snowflake. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Jessica.
I'm so glad you're here because Snowflake is doing phenomenally well, and you're involved in the sales operations side, which is also a fascinating area we want to cover. So please, first of all, explain a little bit about the cloud data platform.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's fantastic to be here. So Snowflake is a cloud data platform run as a SaaS solution. And so what that means is customers can aggregate data sources from all over their company and run analytics at scale. They can run very complex analytics with petabytes of data at scale without running into any slowdown in performance.
Yeah. I'm so impressed because it says that you can have multiple groups accessing the same data and not have a problem with that.
That's right.
How is that possible?
It's part of our core platform and technology and really a value add that Snowflake has. Unlike other solutions in this space where you would get concurrency issues, which means multiple users accessing the same data at one point, the way the technology is built allows everyone to use the solution at once and you don't have those performance issues.
Okay. And for it to do so well, it's a large part has to do with the sales team being able to go out there and get new customers, right?
That's exactly right.
And you work in helping with the incentive plans.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about that. This is the new role you're taking on, putting in the right incentive plans, designing and all that for the salespeople. So tell us about some of the best practices you would recommend.
Sure, absolutely. So the unique thing about my time at Snowflake is I've seen massive scale. So I've seen the company go from 30 AEs to now 400 and growing AEs, where we're expecting to land the end of FY20. I would say that the great thing, if you have a good comp plan that you follow pretty core principles, you'll be able to scale the plan as the company grows. So some of the best practices that I would recommend are, number one, keep it simple.
Okay.
Keep it as simple as possible. Historically, I would say there's been a school of thought where if you really want a sales rep to drive towards a particular behavior, put it in the comp plan. However, what that results in is a comp plan with several measures, sometimes 5 and beyond measures, and then it's really complicated.
Right.
So if you can really boil down the top 1, 2, or maybe 3 incentives that you want to drive for your fiscal year that also align to the company's objectives, that's when you have a great plan.
Okay. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Okay.
Also, not only are reps usually coin operated, they are also very competitive in nature.
True.
Right? So not only do they want to be the top earner, they want to be the best.
Right.
They want to be number one.
The peer recognition.
Exactly. The peer recognition is very key. So having a plan that recognizes and not only rewards top performers, but displaying that within the company and having a leaderboard as well as quarterly competitions such as sales programs also really helps to motivate the sales force.
So what are some of the recognition? How do you recognize their achievements besides the money? Okay.
Yeah. So besides the money, we have what we call a leaderboard, and this is published throughout the company. It's displayed on TVs at our headquarters. It's also within our BI reporting suite. So anyone can look at any given time and who's the number one AE in each particular geography and segment. So, we show the top 5. So if you're not on that list, there's an incentive to be on that list.
Do you worry about the negative impact for those who don't make it on the top 5?
So I would say that if we displayed the entire list of AEs and people could see that, oh no, I'm ranked, number 350 out of 400, I would worry about that. But because we're only showing the top 5, I think that it's a really good motivator to have AEs think, I want to make it on that list. I want to be on the leaderboard for North America or for EMEA.
I think your background, having before you joined Snowflake, I think it's wonderful. You actually started a consulting firm helping the smaller companies. and it's still actually an active firm, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Please tell us about this journey before Snowflake. What did you do before?
Yeah. So I started a company called Claris Designs. It's a sales and analytics consulting company, or sales operations consulting company. How I fell into that is I worked at Salesforce a few years ago, and I was really interested in how a company of that size had the customer retention that it did. They have very low customer churn. So I figured, there must be something about this product from a technical perspective that continues to retain all of its customers. So I took more of an active role in learning the technical components of that. Meanwhile, a co-founder of mine was building out an analytics team at a company called AdRoll, and we started to answer questions within our network for free. And then at one point we thought, maybe we should charge for this. And we ended up starting Claris Designs. We worked with a variety of companies from, $5 million in revenue and only 30 people all the way to $100 million in revenue and maybe 300 or 400 people, and we really helped them solve a variety of problems at each key milestone, right? So 5 million, trying to go to 15, getting to 50, or 50 to 100.
Right.
Each of those milestones has its own unique challenges. So we were able to design a process, system, as well as reporting and analytics to really help provide the foundation for these companies to meet that next milestone.
Well, what were some of the common areas where you would come in and help to improve? Like, for example, setting the processes in place first before you actually have the data to make data-driven decisions.
Right. So I would say that's one of the biggest mistakes companies make. It's pretty consistent at any size. I would say that companies anticipate having data to derive insights and then make a set of decisions, and they don't have a process yet, which generates those data points. So a key principle of mine is process first, then data. So what was really common is not only did the companies have any insight, so they were flying blind into marketing-generated leads versus sales-generated opportunities or ROIs on different channels, they didn't even have a process in place to analyze that data. So first, we would have to configure a process which would capture the data that they needed, and then once that was done and we had some good data to analyze, we would analyze it for them. I'd say that's the most common.
Right. Okay. Everything is hypothetical in terms of planning until you actually execute and then have the data to see whether the results came out the way you anticipated.
Right.
Could you share with us your experience in maybe some of the things that you planned and executed and it had a different reaction?
Sure.
Say, for example, the salespeople.
Right. Let's see. So there are a couple examples. With comp plans specifically, that happens a lot. There was a bonus element to one of the plans that we put in last year where you would earn a bonus at a very high percentage if you sold a specific product. But because of the timing of how that bonus actually worked, we didn't see people selling it until the very end of the year. And so it didn't really drive the consistency of the behavior that we wanted, so we were able to iterate for this year. And we changed the way the actual mechanics work, so there was more consistency in how they were paid in selling those products.
Okay. I think that in the sales organization, you've got the enterprise sales reps, and then you've got the commercial sales reps, and then you have the inside sales folks. They are different, but the sales incentive plans and the framework, does it apply to all of them, or are there some variations?
Right. I think core compensation principles apply to every role and every segment, meaning if you can keep it simple and you're incentivizing only a few or minimal behaviors, it will work well. One of the big differences we see and implement with AEs who have a larger quota or are selling to the enterprise segment, because these sales cycles take much longer, we want to provide some incentive for them in the first 6 months while they're ramping and while they're still learning about the product. So we want to make sure that they still feel encouraged to continue to have at-bats while earning a portion of their variable. So this is what we call a draw, and we implement some portion of their variable which is guaranteed so they can feel secure in the fact that, okay, I'm still learning, but I'm not starving. And they're motivated to continue to try.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very helpful.
It is very helpful.
For the long sales cycle.
Yes.
I want to touch on the workflow of processes because I think what you mentioned about scaling is that to put in the processes to then have the data for insights, right? And then be able to scale. A lot of times companies may just want to get the results, but they don't have those steps broken down, right? So can you share with us a bit more about where do you, and how do you analyze to actually see where you need to then improve in that whole flow?
Right. So the analogy I've always thought of is sort of running a marathon. So I'm a runner myself, and part of running a marathon is training and building up to the 26.2 miles you have to actually run. And then once you've run a few of those practice runs, actually analyzing your splits within each mile and within each segment is really key to maintaining your overall time goal. You know, if your splits start to drop off at mile 18, you still have quite a few miles left to go within the marathon, and you're going to have a really slow time. So similarly with process, a lot of the times companies will have a process that's overarching and they have a starting point and an ending point, but they don't have good data at every small step in between. So it's really hard to analyze where things are breaking down. So the key is to set up a process that's broken down into small segments at every key point. So the time a lead gets generated into a system, the first time someone makes contact with that person, to when they take a meeting, et cetera, so that at any point in the overall flow, you can analyze a subsegment and see if this is inefficient or not. And then once you've identified a pain point, then you can discuss, you know, different business practices to implement to operationalize just that segment and make it more efficient.
Right. So if you break it down into smaller components, then you would have the granular analytics.
Right.
To actually see the conversion from one step to the next.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So we see that in content marketing too, right? Instead of having a giant PDF of information to share, break that down to smaller chunks so that you can measure the consumption of each smaller bite-sized content, and then you can improve the conversion with each step.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that works much better. Because if you have a high-level data point, the question always comes, okay, well, what about this? There are always follow-on questions. And if you don't have those small segments to help drill into analytics behind it, you're sort of stuck at a superficial level data.
So when you talk about workflow and helping to understand the steps of where to improve all that, is it just with the salespeople, or do you work with marketing too? Because there's like top of funnel leads coming in, salespeople getting involved, and there's multi-touch to closing a deal.
Absolutely.
So do you get involved in both sales and marketing?
Absolutely, yes. The whole funnel, so from lead to close or inquiry to close, is very critical to have a key process that's measured at those subsegments along the way. Marketing is an integral partner to our success and to the company's success, and we partner very closely with them. At Snowflake, we have a phenomenal marketing team, so I'm very lucky to be able to work with such fantastic colleagues that are equally as operationally savvy and data-driven, and we have a fantastic partnership where we're constantly looking at data and trying to maintain and operationalize the best process that we can.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm learning a lot hearing the best practices that you share with us.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for being on the show. There you have it, folks. Take it up with Jessica Lee, Rachel Haley from Snowflake.